Lock us in, load us in, pop in that 8-track, spin the tape. Here we go. Hey now everyone, welcome back to a brand new episode of Star Wars Time Show, but it's not the Star Wars Time Show, it's the Star Wars Time Show's Resistance Recap Sub-Show. That's right, it's Matt and Nick. We're back to talk all things Star Wars Resistance, but before we get into breaking down S1E17, the core problem, I have to tell the fans a story, Nick, and it's related to Star Wars Resistance. It's directly related to Star Wars Resistance. So this week on Instagram, you can follow us. Blah blue blee, blah blee, blue blue, blue blue, blah blah. Did you guys get all that? Nick, translate for them. Where can they follow us?
So basically, what Matt just said is that you can go on Instagram and follow us at Star Wars Time Show.
There you go. Say he almost had a stroke.
Yeah, we're all dying here. You can see all of the things that we share. You can see all of the great fan art that we talk about on the regular Star Wars Time Show Top 5. And then as well as that, you can get all of our posts that we share on there as well. So if you want to follow us there, you can get post content from the website. You can get share content from all the great creators on Instagram. And you can also see, all of the stuff that we post, all of our organic content, you could say.
But the reason for me bringing this up before my brain basically shit itself is on Instagram. I was looking, I'm a human. I get excited with likes. I look at the comment feed. So on Saturday, it was a Saturday or Sunday, doesn't matter, it was over the weekend. I'm scrolling through there, and I noticed someone in particular liked our last two Star Wars Resistance posts. I believe it was the Easter egg breakdown and then the recap and review of last week's episode. Whatever the hell that was, the new trooper. Was that new trooper?
New trooper, yep.
Yeah. And I look and I'm like, holy shit, I'm pretty sure that's fucking Kaz, as in Christopher Sean, the guy that voices Kaz on the show. So I drilled into his profile, and lo and behold, it was Christopher Sean. So he buzzed through Star Wars Time Show on IG, liked it. So as any adoring fan would do, I put that into a story and said, hey, look, Kaz himself is down with the SWT. So you should be too. And Christopher didn't stop there. He then slid into our DMs and said, what do you say, Nick? I got to pull it up real quick.
Yeah.
He said, give us some music, somebody.
We get so many Instagram DMs that
I know, we really do. I wasn't kidding around.
We get a lot, yeah.
But he replies and says, stay awesome, my friend. And I'm like, hey, cheers. Thanks for support, Christopher. Team Kaz, hashtag Team Kaz. And he comes back, I appreciate you too. Love this fucking guy.
It's so good, man. It's so good.
And he's no hack. I mean, he's got 56,000 followers. He's a blue check marker. I mean, this guy, he's on other shows. I don't know if you've seen him, he's been on some TV. I think he was doing Hawaii Five-0. I think he's on a soap opera, potentially. Yeah. But to us, he's Kaz Ziono.
Yeah, I mean, that was, like you said before, and we've talked about Instagram community a lot, and then how much it means to get somebody like that, somebody like Christopher Sean, who's the voice of Kaz on the show that we obviously are huge fans of, do a podcast for every week, to have him come by, not only double tap two of our posts, but also, get in the DMs and say, like, he appreciates what we do and, and stuff like that. I mean, that was really big. Like, that was really fantastic. Awesome to see. I mean, we're a small site. Obviously, we have you guys listening, and we appreciate all of the fans that we have. Like and share, as always. But to see somebody that is actually in Star Wars, like in Star Wars Resistance, buzz by and say, like, hey, you guys are doing a great job. I mean, that just
great.
Means,
it was great. I mean, it's like, does he remember even doing that? No. I mean, it was on the weekend. He could have been drunk, stoned, you don't know, just fucking around on his phone. But he did it. He may not remember Star Wars Time again, but you're for damn sure when we post this tomorrow, we'll be tagging him.
Yeah.
Because we talked about him, and you never know. I mean, he seems like a cool guy. The fact that he took that time to just let fans know. I mean, you got to understand, he probably has fans hitting him up all day long. I didn't tag him with the intent of, he's going to reply. It's more just like, hey, man, just the double taps was enough for us. As Nick explained, as someone that shares stuff on IG from a artist perspective daily with my toy photography, I mean, the likes, the comments, they go a long way. At this point in time, it's better than even making money for any of this stuff to me. It's the recognition. I don't know what that says about my personality, but I really appreciate recognition from everybody. But then when you got someone that, you're sitting here, we have a podcast about his show, he's the main character. It was pretty cool. So thanks for that, Christopher. We do appreciate you checking us out. Now, Nick, let's get into the good stuff, and that's breaking down S1E17, the core problem. So as we always do, let's go ahead and start out with the Easter eggs. And quite frankly, I was a huge fan of these, and I believe I labeled one of them as possibly the best Easter egg to date, if not one of the best in all of Star Wars, because it provides kind of some really cool little lore nugget that directly ties into The Force Awakens. So, Nick, we had 7 in total. I'm not going to lie. I'll tell the listeners here. I only had 6 originally, but when I went through on my second viewing, when I get all the screenshots, I noticed another one. So it was a pretty big episode in terms of Easter eggs and references. I'd say we had more references than eggs. But it was a good mix, and it was kind of spread across the trilogies. So first one we had here, and this is why I love Resistance and its writers, is that they're already creating references to past Resistance episodes, right, Nick? So our first one here, Poe shows up on the Colossus somehow. He snuck on there. It's because he's Poe. He's fucking badass. But he brings up, kind of jabs Kaz a little bit, like, hey, man, we'll just, you're the greatest pilot in the galaxy, which is a direct callback to the pilot episode.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say, is that these are perfect little callbacks. So if you guys are familiar with TV series and stuff like that, a lot of times that will happen. But it takes, like you said, Matt, it takes a little bit longer to be able to build these callbacks up most of the time. But like you said, right on the ball, they're already making these callbacks. And I really like the whole way this scene broke out anyway. Like from the very beginning of the episode, Kaz is kind of tinkering around with a device to try to get in touch with
that's
Poe.
why I love this guy.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll talk about during the recap, but I fucking love Kaz.
Yeah, he's just
with each episode, I love the guy more and more. And that's not just because Christopher Sean likes us.
Yeah, I mean, there was one part, I'll bring it up in our recap review. There was one part where I wish he would have done something a little bit different, but you start
I'm
to
interested
love...
to hear that, so don't forget it, because I know I would.
I know it 100% because, like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, "Oh man, I just wish it was a little different."
Good.
But like,
we'll keep that tucked in your brain matter. So moving on to 2, and this is another staple of the show that Nick and I both have talked about before, and that we love, and that's the fact that the Fireball could be an even bigger piece of shit than the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, this thing is always falling apart. And I'm glad that you brought up the Falcon, Matt, because number 2 is during the episode, the Fireball, again, is being piloted by Kaz, and for some reason or another, it backfires, and it doesn't start, and makes all these problems happen for Kaz and for Poe. And during that sequence of events, we get the audible cue that the Falcon and Anakin's pod racer did.
Was that not a mix of the two, or was I crazy there?
It was like, whew, whew.
Right. I mean, it started with like the Falcon failure, but then it was kind of that beep, 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 beep,
yeah,
like of Anakin's trying to start up.
Yeah, it was like when the engines were starting to like pop a little bit, like they started to do that. Yeah, so
I love. I mean, the Fireball is a character itself now. Like it's hard to put anything up there with the Falcon, because I mean the Falcon, quite frankly, is probably the most iconic, famous ship character of all time. It is a character. I mean, hell, it's been featured in pretty much every trilogy. Yes, it was even in the prequels. Just look for it. You'll find it. It's there.
Episode 3.
But the Fireball, to me, is almost becoming that type of Star Wars character. I mean, like the Falcon, it's kind of taken on a life of its own because it is such a pile of shit.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the first time that we've seen Star Wars try to mirror the Falcon in any way, because like you said, the Falcon has been the Falcon since the OT into the sequel trilogy. We obviously didn't have something like it outside of Anakin's pod racer in episode 1 for the prequel trilogy, but I like how they're trying to mirror that or to emulate that with the fireball.
Just there's very few shit. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say the Falcon's probably the only ship character out there. I mean, I guess you could argue the Ghost and Phantom from Rebels.
Probably.
But outside that, I mean, an X-wing's an X-wing, a tie's a tie. They just didn't have the charm and character of these vehicles.
Yeah, it's more the droids that get the focus in the cartoon series. Like, even in Star Wars Clone Wars, you see that R4 plays a bigger role than you would expect. That's Obi-Wan Kenobi's droid, the little red astromech.
Call the old folks home. Is that what he says?
Yeah, care of the old folks home, I think, is how he puts it when he's
I'm sure that's not what it means at all. But,
yeah.
or what he actually says, but that's Attack of the Clones dialogue.
When he said that and he said "old folks home," I immediately thought of the Jedi Council because everybody.
That's what I mean.
Old.
Like that's what I hear. So is that really what he says? I guess we'll have to save that for another day. But
yeah, I mean, maybe we'll have to dig into that and see if he really said it.
I was like he was just making fun of Yoda and Mace and all those curmudgeonly assholes sitting in the tower on Coruscant.
Exactly. Yeah. But anyway, so moving on to number
Fireball,
3
rock
here.
and roll. We love you, Team Fireball.
Yeah, it's really fun every time we see it. Number 3 is that Poe and Kaz mention how a star system has gone, hinting at Starkiller base testing. So basically what happens is...
This is reverse foreshadowing.
Yeah, so they're coming out and they're going to explore the unknown regions of space after Kaz kind of shows Poe this map that he found. They get out there, they stop, and I almost took this as like another reference towards episode 4, so I'll kind of show you how it breaks down a little bit. So they come out, they stop, and they're like, holy shit, something should be here, and it's a sun. It's like this sun is missing. Yes, exactly, Alderaan. So the sun's missing, and we know from TFA that Starkiller Base had to take the energy of a sun, of a star, in order to fire its planet-killing device. So that's the reference that Matt calls out. I was thinking, like you said, Matt, of Alderaan when they jump out of hyperspace in episode 4.
I'll get it to you. Look at you. This is back-to-back episodes now. Nick's starting to flex his eggs and reference muscles.
I know a little bit about Star Wars.
Check this shit out, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would still lump that into the same one. We could just clarify it in the reference, but yeah, for sure. I mean, I just was like, oh, well, this is definitely a Starkiller-based testing ground, and they also, were clearly mining planets and whatever for resources. So, I mean, it's pretty clear now that the First Order has essentially been raping and ravaging the unknown regions completely scot-free. I mean, no one knows what the fuck they're doing. No one cares outside of the Resistance, and they're only getting this information decades late because they finally decided to use a spy in Kaz.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, Kaz, you can make an argument now that Kaz has done more for the Resistance in discovery of the First Order than Poe and General Leia put together.
Oh, yeah. Like, when we get to the recap and review, we can mention it, but, like...
Yeah. Sorry,
like, when he's giving the information to Poe, Poe's like, I don't even know. Why are you showing me this? What's about the unknown regions? Like, it was completely clear that he had never heard of it before.
Oh, yeah. So moving on to 4. I took some liberties with this one, but as all things First Order emulating the Empire, I still think it made sense. So Kaz and Poe, they're on this kind of blown-out planet. I mean, it wasn't like Death Starred away, but you tell it definitely got fucked up.
Yeah.
So they're exploring, and we as the audience, we see that they're being watched. I mean, we see as soon as they land, something's watching them, something's watching them. We know it's mechanical because it's through a mechanical lens. And lo and behold, we get this little head pops out, and that's where I was like, oh, I mean, this is, again, the First Order wanting to be the Empire. And they more or less designed their probe droids after the Imperial probe droids. But as with anything First Order, they essentially put it on steroids.
Yeah, they upgraded it a little bit. So they
called it like the mother, and it like shit out all these little baby balls.
And one other thing that I noticed with this, and I don't know if it's just me, but like the little babies of it looked like the training droids.
Oh yeah, dead on. They were black training remotes, dead on.
Yeah,
I noticed that. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, so it was really cool, but the head of it, like that disc-shaped head that you see is definitely right from ESP.
It's
like you called out.
you know what I mean though. I mean, it's just like how they essentially kept the Storm and TIE Pilot armor, but they just put their own little touch on it. You know,
Exactly.
rounded it off a little bit more, made it look a little more modern.
Yeah, actually, if you want to, people out there who are keeping up with the Star Wars Kids YouTube channel, there was a recent video about stormtroopers on there, and they kind of give a little explanation as to how the First Order upgraded the stormtrooper armor. And you know
it's on
what was different about 'em.
StarWarsTime.net. Just search Galaxy Adventures or whatever. I try to get those up each week because to me they're essentially art in motion.
Yeah,
but
really
the way I phrased that video, Nick, is like that's the first time stormtroopers ever looked badass to me.
Yeah, and
video.
The funny thing is like you posted that, and then like right after it, you also posted a video that counts how many times stormtroopers miss in all the Star Wars videos.
Yeah. Go me.
Oh man, good stuff.
All right,
Number 5.
Yeah, 5, Nick. This is the one that I completely missed on my first viewing, and I was kind of ashamed of myself because these are the ones I pride myself on because they're not very obvious to the untrained eye. So again, on the same planet as Kaz and Poe are investigating, they're walking by like this temple-like structure, and there's a symbol on it. And the second time I saw them, like, fuck, that's the symbol from the Tehar kids. That's like the little, I think you and I were calling it like a Japor snippet thing back during the Children of Tehar episode. But if those of you listening, if you remember, the Cal and Isla had this little symbol with them from their home world, and Doza got a hold of it, and when he saw it, you could tell he was like, he knew something.
Yeah.
We still don't know what. You know, who knows? Maybe that's what made him quit the Empire. Maybe decades prior he was on that planet fucking shit up. Who knows? But, Nick, this temple had that same symbol. So this is all kind of tying back to last week where I'm like, these kids aren't just kids.
Yes.
They don't come from just a normal place, and I think this kind of further proves our little theory we've got going.
Yeah, I think so too. In terms of this Easter egg, like I definitely didn't catch it, but there was also like a second giveaway that this planet that they were on was probably linked to the kids, because as Kaz and Poe were kind of walking towards this building, this wrecked building, there's a doll, like a little stuffed animal.
He brings
under
that
it.
all the way back to Colossus, so there's
He
a great
does.
chance that could spawn a little plot thread coming up.
Yeah, I mean it could.
Like
you
if
know,
the kids see it, they'll be like, "Where'd you get that?"
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking too. But yeah, so that planet could very well be Tehar, where these children were taken from. And who knows what has happened to the rest of the population. From what we could see, that the entire planet was essentially destroyed.
So let me riff on this a bit, Nick. You know, last week I was speculating that these kids could have some force powers. I was telling you offline that I finally played through the Resurrection DLC for Battlefront 2, so I finally got that backstory and learned what Resurrection was. If you're not in the know, essentially Project Resurrection was essentially the First Order's mission to bring back Imperial rule, and one of the main cruxes of it was to abduct, conscript, whatever children, just like the Jedi did, and turn them into their army.
Brainwashed them, yeah.
Exactly. So when I was watching, I was like, well, maybe the First Order was there to conscript these kids. I'm like, no, because the timeline doesn't work. Because obviously the First Order exists. It has its battalions of troopers, so those troopers have matured for, like I said, probably a decade or two.
Yeah.
And these aren't clones. They're just stolen kids, or who knows, maybe parents giving them away. I mean, Jedis did the same shit, so don't roll your eyes at the First Order. Jedis are just as bad. But I've also seen some theories floating around that maybe Kylo or the Knights of Ren had something to do with this planet, and maybe they were after these kids in this temple because, like I said, maybe they do have some sort of force affinity.
Yeah, I think the force power part of this could work both ways. So if you look at it from your initial perspective, which is like they're just like, if they are trying to get more troops, like they're planning on a long war, they want to keep their forces up for years to come. So they get all these kids, they conscript them, they try to brainwash these kids, but it doesn't work. That would be their force powers. Like their force affinity is preventing them, or they can like repel this type of brainwashing or this programming that was mentioned in the movies. And it would also work the other way, where if it is the Knights of Ren and they're trying to build up a force of Force users, they would have sensed their power from, somewhere else in the galaxy, come there to essentially kidnap these kids, and then along the way they just lay waste to the whole planet, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, we know Snoke basically had a Force antenna. I mean, he sniffed out Solo, so
Yeah.
I mean, he could very well have been just trying to build up a Force. I mean, we still don't know what the fuck the Knights of Ren do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could very well, I mean, they could have been going out to planets trying to find Force kids and either killing them, just so Snoke always knew that he only had to deal with Kylo and the light that was going to rise to meet him, or they're secretly building up a Force army, which we've potentially heard rumors about, that the Knights of Ren could come back and maybe try to, usurp Kylo.
Yeah, so there's a lot of
a lot of
ways
shit to
that
unpack there in an Easter egg, but hey.
Yeah. I mean, these kids, they definitely have more of a story to tell in this show, so I'm really interested to see where they go. Number 6 is another Audible reference that you caught here, and it's a good one because I like the scene that it comes from, and it says, it's Poe and Kaz are on the planet, and then Poe realizes that they're being watched by this Imperial probe droid, and he says it just like Luke says it when he's on Dagobah, and he feels Yoda watching him. He's like we're being watched, and then he turns around. If you remember the scene from ESB, Luke turns around with his blaster drawn, and then Yoda's there in the corner like, "Oh, don't fire! It's just me." Yeah,
that's my favorite. Yeah, I mean that's like the true hobo Yoda right there, where he's kind of testing Luke to see what he's all about, and he's just acting a fool.
Yeah. So I like that.
R2-D2 for flashlights and shitty just sausage sticks,
smacking him with the cane. Yeah, that was a good pull.
I love that shit.
But yeah, that was a solid reference. So good one there. And then number 7, the final one this is probably your favorite one, Matt. I think this is the one you were talking about.
Oh yeah, I mean this is like, I love this. This is the shit I live for, and it's nothing that special. It's just these little nuggets are like, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I'm glad I know that, even though it doesn't really affect anything else about Star Wars moving forward. I'm glad that I know that.
Yeah. So the Easter egg, it's an Easter egg. The Easter egg here is we see, so Poe is, obviously gets to the Colossus station and it has to leave. So when they're leaving, you see the X-Wing that, Poe's bumming around on. It's the X-Wing that he had when he was on Jakku.
And the reason we know that for sure, and we're not just pulling shit out of our asses like some Star Wars sites do, is because early in the episode, Poe literally informs Kaz, "Hey man, General Leia's sending me to Jakku. I need BB-8 back."
Yeah, it's like, I am heading to Jakku right after we're finished.
Yeah, he's like, but we have enough time to go do this little side mission. So, I mean, take it for what it is, but Poe literally, when he leaves this episode with BB-8, is flying his ass to go see Lor San Tekka.
Yeah. So, I mean, and we can kind of use this to transition into the recap review, but this now gives us an established timeline for where we are in terms of Resistance and TFA. So if you figure it's just going to be a quick hyperspace jump to Jakku, and that's right where he's going, then we're only probably a day, maybe 2 days out from the start of The Force Awakens at this point in Star Wars Resistance. So let's move into the review and what we thought of this episode and kind of give the quick recap on it. But I really, just to kick it off, I thought that this episode was fantastic because, again, it's just full on the First Order plot line. And also we get so much more context into the plans of the First Order and how they were able to build this force up over time in a way that nobody was aware of. So I was really a huge fan of that. And it all kicks off with essentially the Colossus station being on a full lockdown by the First Order.
Steady lockdown. It's fucked. Nothing's getting off or in, but go ahead.
Yeah, so Kaz is essentially trying to build a communication device to get through the First Order blockade of information. You can't send any messages out. There's
Nick's not joking either. Kaz, literally the first scene, he's trying to create an antenna.
Yeah,
and Yeager's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Bucket's sitting there like, "Idiot." BB-8's like, "Good luck."
Yeah, like it's clearly
Yeah,
not
it's why we love Kaz. I mean, his heart's always in the right place, even though he might not have the skills to back it up.
He's an eternal optimist because like everybody knows that if you have a comms jam, like a station-wide comms jam, you can't build something in your backyard that's going to get around it. So, but he's going at it anyway. Like he's not going to give up. So he's building this whole device, and you know he's tinkering with it. Everybody's telling him it can't come true. Like you can't do it. It's not going to work. This is not going to be the dream that comes true, and you're going to reach out to the first or to the resistance. And then all of a sudden he's tinkering, and then he hears Poe's voice. He's like, "Oh my God, it works! Look how clear the reception is." And then we just turn a simple spin around reveals that Poe is now on the Colossus station, and then this is where everything kicks off, Matt.
Yeah, so, I mean, the first thing that's impressive is Poe got onto the Colossus when it's literally being circled by TIE fighters, and the entire station itself has a garrison or more of First Order troopers. So, just, again, shows you how badass Poe really is.
And CB-23, we hear that at the end. We'll get there, though.
Yeah, CB, that's going to be the new droid.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, dude, I've said this before. Anytime we get a Poe Kaz episode, sign me up.
Oh yeah, Oscar Isaac brings it every time too. Like he was great in this episode.
Oh, he always is, and he brings more authenticity to the show. I mean, Gwendolyn's on it too. I'm starting to wonder, man. Do you think they got Driver to do something? Maybe. Do you think we're ever going to get an animated Kylo? I mean, they've never mentioned that he's involved, so he's probably not.
I just think that it could easily be done here, especially if we're talking about the TLJ timeline where the First Order has control of the entire galaxy. You would figure that, you know, well, there's a possibility that the Colossus gets scuttled, but like if we're working in that area.
Oh, by the way, dude, you know what we floated last week, that it could be like a ship or something?
Yeah.
Homeboy over at Star Wars Explained the day after put out a video, is the Colossus a space station? And I think he's 100% right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm going to take credit because we both did say that it could be some sort of floating, flying structure. But I'm pretty sure that's a fucking submerged space station.
Yeah, yeah. So now
just think about it. It's a refueling station for spaceships. Why the fuck is it on the water?
Yeah, no. And what's probably happening is it's pumping fuel. It's got like a drill. It's just drilling into whatever that ocean is, and it's pumping fuel up through the pipes or however it's going to get it to the station. That's how they refuel the refueling station, is whatever is underneath the surface of this water here. They're just drilling to get it. At least that's what I think. But who knows? We'll probably find out soon though, because we did see a giant splash in the
it looked like it was sinking, so I don't know if it's like taken off or it is submergible, but I mean, or submersible, who knows? But
yeah,
I just thought it was funny. I mean, obviously, if you're a Star Wars fan, you may have heard of Star Wars Explained. He's on YouTube. He's like a hardcore lore junkie for Star Wars. I mean, he's pretty well known and knowledgeable. I'm not gonna lie, but I just thought it's funny that we're on the kind of thinking along the same lines there.
Yeah. So, you know, after Kaz gets over the excitement of Poe being there, he lets him know that, look, I'm not just here to bum around. I'm here because we have a very important mission to do. And this is where he informs him that, you know, we have just enough time for you to give me an intel brief and then for me to get to Jakku because General Leia has given him a mission. So Poe, you know, sets up, and then Kaz gives BB-8 this little data rod that we talked about last time, and then Kaz breaks down to him, this is what I found out. The First Order is interested in the Colossus station to keep it away from the Resistance, and they have been staging a giant force in the unknown regions of space. And then from there, we get off.
This all comes from Kaz's intel.
Yeah, this is purely off of Kaz's intel. If we remember, he got this information in the last episode when he snuck onto that shuttlecraft that the First Order had when he was dressed up as a First Order trooper. That's where he encountered who we thought was BB-9E, probably was. I'm going to say it was. And then he was able to steal that data rod from that shuttle, and then that's where he found the information. So he gets the information, shows it to Poe, and then Poe's like, we got to get out there. We have to see what's going on out there after seeing this information that Kaz got. And then that's where they come up with this escape plan, right, Matt? They try to get off of the Colossus.
Oh, dude, this was crazy. So go ahead and set up this scene because this was awesome. And this, again, just shows you how big Poe's balls are.
Yeah,
and
so
just how well versed he is in the art of flying, even if he's literally hanging on the outside of a starfighter.
Not inside of a ship, outside of a ship. So
I love this guy.
It's crazy. So essentially, like, Poe is not just going to fly his X-Wing off of the Colossus station. Like, it's too obvious. Like, people would be like, what the why is there a Resistance X-Wing flying out of, now First Order controlled area? So the plan is to essentially mask the fireballs lowering in deployment under what looks like, or above what is like some sort of giant, what was it? It was like a
freighter
container,
of some sort.
Yeah,
like a huge freighter ship. I mean, so Poe's ass is literally wearing an air mask hanging outside the fireball.
Yep.
Kaz is like floating it basically on top of this freighter so they can get off the Colossus. And then this is where the Easter egg comes in, because then they then have to jump start the fireball, and it doesn't quite start, with Poe on the outside of it, essentially crashing down to his death.
Yeah, so the whole fireball starts to just plummet down to the ocean surface.
It's such a piece of shit.
You know, it just does the Millennium Falcon. It's like and
it just starts to go. Yeah, and then that's where the pod racer sound comes in when it starts to fire up again.
Yeah, I mean, it was hilarious. But so anyway, as expected, the fireball kicks in right at the last second. They take off, and they're able to clear Colossus Station airspace. And this is where Poe finally gets into his own X-Wing with CB-23, the other astromech ball droid, just like BB-8. And then these two head out to the unknown regions of space to investigate what Kaz has found.
Do you think BB-8 is a lover, or do you think he just is a big fan of droids? Because I can't remember if him and CB, like, I know, like, when we get to where they make the exchange, they, like, roll past each other.
And like, they have little hands.
Yeah, they, like, put out their little hand. I fucking love that stupid shit.
But
I mean,
funny.
I'm telling you, BB-8 is, like, one of the most caring droids out there. He's very non-R2, non-C-3PO. I mean, those two are, like, assholes to each other. But BB-8, like I said, I know Bucket was in this episode for a little bit. I don't know if it's long enough to see if BB-8 was doing something for him. But like I told Nick last week, if you look in the background in nearly almost every episode, at least since the mid-season return, BB-8 is doing something to help Bucket. It's like the sweetest shit in the world.
Yeah.
Like now, he goes and picks his helmet back up for him.
I mean, I think he is. I think BB-8 is just an all-around. He's just an all-around nice droid. I don't know. I don't think he has a thing for CB, maybe, because like you said, like, you know, towards the end, we do get like a little reaching, almost touching, but
it's almost like a high five, like, all right, sister, see you later.
Yeah,
like I'm going back with my dude.
Take care of Kaz for me. But
take care. Have fun with that idiot.
Yeah, good luck. But anyway, once the two get out there is when our second Easter egg comes in, or another one of our Easter eggs comes in, and that is when they come out of hyperspace, they're in this space where there should be a sun. Like Poe says, there should be a star here. We're in a star system, but there's no star. And that's where the Easter egg comes in with, you know, this is probably where Starkiller Base absorbed an entire, you know, star.
Well, you know what it's like, Nick?
Laser.
It's like what Rogue One did for us in A New Hope, and kind of explaining how the Death Star came to be and how they were testing it. I mean, we're getting little glimpses of that now through Resistance for The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
I mean, we've learned all along what they've been doing in the unknown regions, the mining, this, that, and the other thing, the planet cracker they wanted. Well, this is what they're doing. They're testing Starkiller Base. They're clearly going the systems, draining their star, probably taking all the resources, and then moving on. And that's kind of what Poe and Kaz rolled up to. Yeah,
they discover a bunch of different, looks like planet structures that were either completely cracked in half. One was cored all the way through the middle, but the planet itself was still, I guess you would say, intact. But it looked like it was some sort of either testing ground for the weaponry for Starkiller Base, or it was another mining operation for the First Order to just drain these planets dry of all of their resources. So after discovering this for a little bit, they kind of do a quick flyby of some of these planets. They notice the one that's cored out. They fly through it to find that there's a gravity well inside of it that's forcing all this debris to go through it. Luckily, they're able to successfully navigate it. Couple of close calls on Kaz's side, but he makes it through. And then this is where we get to what we assume is Tehar.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of back to our conversation, it has to be. I mean, that symbol's like the dead giveaway, right?
Yeah, I mean, that big symbol over the building. So essentially, they land on the planet to investigate, like, what the hell's going on here? They see this planet, and they're like, it looks dead, but it's not destroyed. Like, it's not obliterated like a Death Star would do, or like what happened to the Hosnian system in TFA. It's just like, it looks like there's no
it's desolate.
life on it.
So that's what I mean. Like, did they just go and murder everybody, like the Jakku village?
Yeah, exactly. That has to be what happened, because upon landing on this planet, like, you can see structures, like we were saying before, like, you can see where life had once been, but everything is now just completely desolated, like you mentioned. And this is where we see the other Easter egg, which is the symbol of Tehar that the children had on the Colossus station is prominently shown above this one building that Poe and Kaz go to investigate.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that, people. A little bit of a technical difficulty. I can't even blame it on my cat. Don't really know what happened, but lost Nick's audio, but we're back up and running. So, Nick, let's get right back into the conversation. We're talking about the structure on what we're saying is probably Tehar. So let's get back to it.
Yeah, so we were talking about this giant, what looks like, I would say it almost looks like a town hall, right? Like, what else would you have? What other kind of building would you have that prominently displays, like, your planetary symbol, or,
I was going like temple of some sort.
Could be too. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Especially if this is like a force-sensitive type of planet. Like, if they know that they have force-sensitive people, or they, a religious type of people, a temple would fit in perfectly with this type of structure. So I think that's a good call. Unfortunately, though, we never get to go inside of it, because right as they pull up to this new building is when they're noticed by this First Order probe droid.
Yeah, I mean, it scans them. So do you think the First Order is just leaving these things behind after they clear a sector out?
I think so, because they probably want to see, like, okay, how far are they behind us? Like, because they already know that they're ahead of everybody. They know that the Resistance isn't on their tail yet. So they're leaving these little droids here and there to see, like, okay, so where are they in reference to, where we have been? And then that way they can see, like, how close they are to catching on to their plot and their plans.
Okay, so.
But what we do know is that wherever the First Order staging base is, it has to be pretty close to this planet, because Major Von Reg in a cadre of stormtroopers or TIE fighters show up pretty quickly after this little tussle with the...
Oh, it was like 2 seconds. I mean, they fought him for what, maybe 2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, it took a little while, and this is actually where the part was that I wish Kaz would have done something a little bit differently. And it's not even really Kaz's fault. It's just like, I wish it was written a little differently. So they're fighting the Imperial probe droid. All of the little babies come out, like we mentioned. Poe starts to take on the little training droids, and then it's up to Kaz to take out the main droid. So the way he does it is that essentially he trips and he falls down and he shoots wildly in the air, and it happens to hit the probe droid right in the eye.
Well, I mean, that's vintage Kaz, though,
exactly.
Right?
That's vintage Kaz. But I wish, like, just to show like him getting better at his job and stuff like that.
He's not such a buffoon.
Yeah, like,
sometimes.
he just like he like calms himself, he lines up, and then bam, he just hits the shot. Like, I wish that would have happened, but it is vintage Kaz for him to, like, essentially stumble his way into succeeding in whatever he's doing. But I do want to see eventually, like, he gets away from that and he starts just like executing things properly, and like in that instance, like, he would just like calm down, like, I got this, and then he just hits the shot. But overall, like we said, vintage Kaz still very cool. still very fun.
I think they're gonna run with as we've been calling him. You know, he's just this clumsy, lovable Star Wars lead. He's never gonna be a Luke or a Rey or hell, even a Finn or a Poe. I mean, he's a Kaz.
Yeah, exactly. He is his own hero, which is really cool to see. So like we said, after that little skirmish, in comes Von Reg and the TIE fighters from the First Order. And thus ensues a chase once Kaz and Poe make their way back onto the Fireball and Poe's X-Wing, respectively. And this chase takes them none other place than the gravity well that they were in initially. And this is basically the closest that we've gotten so far to the asteroid belt chase that we saw in Empire Strikes Back, where the Falcon is kind of weaving in and out of these asteroids, and the Imperial TIE fighters are just smashing into these things and blowing up, and Han and the gang are able to escape due to all of the madness that was ensuing.
Well, I mean, hell, they even did a callback in this episode, because when Kaz and Poe first get to this part of the unknown regions, they actually fly through this cored out planet, and there's a gravity well in it, so they're kind of used to what that's going to do to their ship, and that's why they take them back through it, because Poe's like, this is pretty much our only way to get away from these guys, because I think it was 3-on-2.
It was, yeah.
And Von Reg, I mean, he's up there in terms of skill with Poe. So they had a formidable chase going on. Plus, they were jumped, so I mean, they weren't ready for the dogfight. But they take them through that gravity well. It's pretty cool. The planes start floating, and they take out the two ties. But then Von Reg makes it through.
Yeah, and what I really did think that Von Reg was going to go down here, because like Matt and I were talking off cast, like eventually, I don't know if we're going to get to a point where Von Reg and Commander Pyre, like we don't see them in the movies. Are they going to show up in episode 9? They definitely could. Also, they could be dispatched. So as soon as we entered this gravity well, his two TIE teammates went down to, debris in there, and it almost looked like for a second that Von Reg was going to go down, but he was able to turn around and get out of dodge before he took any damage. But it did allow Poe and Kaz to successfully escape from them. And then once they're out of the gravity well, we get the nice scene that we mentioned earlier in the cast.
Oh yeah, the droid pass.
Yeah, the
droid exchange.
So it's so funny the way it's done, because I'm thinking like, how the hell is this going to happen? Like, they're in the middle of space. How are they going to exchange these droids? Essentially, they just float right past each other in the gravity of space,
yeah. Spinning and everything. And like we said, I even think they even gesture to each other like, "See you later, buddy."
Yeah, like their little hands come out and what-do-do, as they pass by. And then from there, BB-8 syncs up with Poe, CB-23 syncs up with Kaz, and then Poe shoots off into hyperspace to where we assume is going to be Jakku for his next mission.
He's off to Jakku. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he's in a standard issue Resistance X-Wing. He picked up his best friend. He even mentioned it at the beginning of the episode. Leia's sending him there. We know why she is. Going to check the old family friend lore out. And he's going to get the all-important data rod, as Nick likes to call it.
The data rod. Get the one,
yep.
not the one that Kaz shared with him early in the episode, but get the all-important one that is the star map.
The rod of rods.
Yes, the rod that leads to the Jedi, the last Jedi. But so before they jump out, Kaz is like, wait, hold on. How am I supposed to get back onto the Colossus? Like, you got there somehow. I don't know how you got there. How am I supposed to get past all these First Order ships and officers and everything around? And he said, don't worry, CB-23 will get you in. And then they jump off to hyperspace, and the next scene we see is that Kaz is sneaking back onto the, well, not even really sneaking. He walks back onto the Colossus. He has the stuffed animal that they found on Tehar with him, and he has a new droid, which Tam seems to notice very quickly.
Oh yeah, I mentioned this, especially because the way they cast Tam last week. I pretty much called it. I put Tam on betrayal watch.
Yeah, actually, that was my mindset too. I mean, she's already come out and said that she's a fan of the First Order being there, and we know that her family had previous ties to the Empire, and now she's very upset to see Kaz, here.
Well,
with this new
she
toy.
knows that something's fishy with him, and I think she's picking up on that Yeager's kind of looped into it too. Whatever the hell these two are up to, she's starting to catch on to him. And I think there's going to be a scenario presented where she thinks she sees something, even though it's not, and she's going to go rat them out. I mean, I really do think Tam is going to unknowingly betray Kaz and possibly Yeager.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we know that there's some tension that's been brewing between her and, Yeager and Kaz. In the last episode, she straight called it out. She tells Yeager, like, you always agree with him, like you're always on his side, very angrily, and then stomps off. And then here again, like, she calls it out, and something definitely could happen between Tam and the other two fellas here. And she could, like you said, unwittingly kind of foil
yeah, I'm not
plans.
saying she's going to go like, oh, I'm going to get them in trouble. She's going to think she's doing the right thing based on her belief that the First Order is a peacekeeping force, and they're not there to essentially steal everything, and if they have to, murder everybody.
Yeah. So overall, man, I think you gave this episode an 8.8. I have to agree. Like, this was a top-notch episode where we see great action, but we also get really good information and context into these events that are upcoming in TFA. I mean, now we know exactly where Poe was coming from before he gets to Jakku and Lor Santeca's village. And then we also know that, Kaz's intel leads directly to very important information that the Resistance uses to learn about their plot. I mean, this is solid stuff coming out of Resistance.
Yeah, we've been saying it all along. I mean, this is, if you really are someone that loves Star Wars, all things Star Wars, and you just want to eat it up wherever you can get it, you're missing out on this one if you're not watching it. I mean, like all new things, you got to, give it some time to let it hit its stride. There are a few early episodes you're like, whatever, these are entertaining, but I'm not really seeing it. But now that it's definitely in full swing, I mean, as Nick said, we are getting revelations about the First Order we never got from the movies, probably never would have gotten from the movies without getting this Resistance series. So I'm glad it's here. I'm glad it's still going, and I love the direction it's headed. And as we said beforehand, Nick, we probably got maybe 4 or 5 episodes left, so things are really going to start ramping up. We kind of speculated that we may see the Starkiller base Hosnian system destruction next week in this upcoming episode. We always get the clip on Wednesday, so that'll be going out. Well, really, if you're listening to it, it's probably already up on StarWarsTime.net. But we'll know a little bit more on Wednesday when we get that clip from Disney.
Absolutely.
About where the show's headed. So I think that does it for this Resistance recap provided by your boys at the Star Wars Time Show. We do appreciate your listens. Christopher, Sean, if you did listen and you're still here, thank you. I don't know what's wrong with you. We love you, though. Appreciate you. Go Kaz. # Team Kaz all the way. But for the rest of you Star Wars fans, you know what to do. Get those browsers tuned to StarWarsTime.net. Look around. Click on some stuff. Subscribe to the podcast. Check us out on YouTube. I haven't really been able to do a rant in about a week, so might try to get a new one out here tomorrow, Thursday. But we're here for your Star Wars needs. We're here for your Star Wars podcast needs, for your Star Wars Resistance needs, your Episode 9 movie rumor speculation fanboy needs. That's what we do. This is Star Wars time. There's always time for Star Wars time. Get used to it. All right. Until next Star Wars time, may the Force be with you. Always.